Before the apocalypse arrived, I was the driver made to run errands like a dog for a top-tier celebrity mother and daughter. The moment the meteor struck, I awakened the emotion system. She was still cursing me for scratching the luxury car, so I swung back and slapped her twice. The system popped up, anger plus 10, joy plus 1. I stared at Qin Zhilan's swollen face and laughed. So you're a fucking him, huh? Through the rearview mirror, I glanced at the celebrity mother-daughter duo in the back seat. Qin Zhilan, 37, black stockings wrapping her long legs, full bosom and shapely rear, radiating mature allure. Tang Mingyue, just turned 18, white stockings, a white dress, long straight black hair, an innocent face. One ripe, one young. Gorgeous as hell. Qin Zhilan looked up and met my gaze. Frowning, her tone full of disgust. Keep your filthy eyes in check and drive. Look around again and believe me, I'll make it impossible for you to survive even as a driver. Mom, why waste words on this kind of person? Tang Mingyue turned her face away, as if one more glance at me would dirty her eyes. I drew my gaze back, gripped the steering wheel, and said nothing. What's the act for? Who doesn't know all the dirty little things in your circle? This driver job pays well. Just bear with it, and it'll pass. The car moved steadily along the national highway toward the film base. Suddenly, an ear-splitting howl tore through the sky. What was that? Qin Zhilan looked out the window. I instinctively hit the brakes. Only then did I see the blue sky split by countless blazing red streaks, plunging rapidly toward the ground. Meteors? My heart lurched. Other cars on the highway noticed too. Brakes and horns erupted all around. Bang! Boom! A meteor slammed into the road ahead, blasting out a shallow crater. Then countless meteors fell like rain, not large in size but with the force of artillery shells. If they hit a car, it exploded. Ah! Tang Mingyue screamed with her head in her hands. Qin Zhilan went deathly pale. That lofty air of hers shattered in an instant. Drive. Get out of here. She didn't even need to say it. I was already flooring the gas. Both hands clamped hard around the steering wheel, my focus razor sharp. Swerving, accelerating, braking hard, I relied on my driving skills and this Cullinan's performance to weave painfully through the chaotic traffic. This stretch of highway was open and exposed. Stopping meant waiting to die, so all I could do was drive forward with everything I had. Finally, the replica ancient-style buildings of Hungyan Film Base appeared ahead. The entrance was in total chaos. Cars jammed up, people running everywhere, buildings belching black smoke. I caught sight of a two-story reinforced concrete warehouse on the outskirts, its door half open. I yanked the wheel and charged toward it. What are you doing? Are you crazy? Qin Zhilan screamed. Shut up. I growled. If you want to live, then fucking keep quiet. Can't you see what's happening outside? The two of them were stunned by my shout, and actually shut up. I drifted the tail out and slid into the warehouse. Inside were piles of film props, empty of people. I got out and pulled up my phone, and the whole screen was filled with breaking reports of sudden abnormal meteor showers worldwide. Death tolls were rising sharply for unknown reasons. Holy shit, the end of the world was here. Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue also got out of the car, faces pale, hair and clothes in disarray. But once their eyes landed on the Cullinan covered in scratches, anger immediately overwhelmed fear. Look at what you've done to this car. Qin Zhilan pointed at the bodywork, her voice trembling with rage. How do you even do your job as a driver? The repair bill alone is more than your annual salary. Tang Mingyue also touched the scratches on the door with distress, glaring at me in disgust. Exactly. So reckless. Just then, ding. A cold mechanical voice rang in my mind. Emotion absorption system activated. This system can convert strong emotions others feel because of you into emotion points. Emotional points can be exchanged for anything. Current emotional points: 15. Qin Zhilan anger plus 10. Tang Mingyue anger plus 5. The system? I spent more than 20 years as a bottom-rung wage slave, numbing myself with web novels every day. I knew all too well what this meant. This heaven-sent fortune has finally come to me, but these two were still yammering on. I put up with them for a long time. Before, I had no choice but to endure it for the sake of my job. Now, with the system on my side and the apocalypse approaching, why the hell should I still tolerate them? I turned around, my face stripped of its usual deference, leaving only coldness and a trace of madness. Why you? What do you want to do? Qin Zhilan instinctively took half a step back, but her arrogance made her straighten up immediately. Why are you glaring? You can't even take a few words? I said nothing, only curled my lips into a cold smile. I took 2 steps forward, and under their shocked gazes, smack, smack, using both hands, I delivered 2 crisp slaps, one landing on Qin Zhilan's and the other on Tang Mingyue's delicate faces. The force was no small matter, and both of their heads tilted aside as five-finger red marks instantly appeared on their cheeks. The world seemed to freeze. Only the sounds of meteorites falling and the chaos outside the warehouse remained. Qin Jilan and Tang Mingyue were completely stunned, clutching their faces, eyes wide with disbelief. Loli, nobody actually dared hit us? Qin Jilan anger +10, fear +5, happiness +1. Tang Mingyue anger +5, fear +10. Anger and fear were all expected, but that happiness +1. From Qin Jilan. Damn, what's wrong with this old hag? She was happy after getting hit? TSK, rich circles really are messy. Emotional points surged from 15 to 46 in an instant. Amazing efficiency. Qin Jilan reacted first, letting out a shrill scream. It wasn't fear, but extreme rage. You lowly driver, how dare you hit me? Tang Mingyue burst into tears. Mom, he hit me. Call the police and arrest him. I want him in prison. I want him dead. Qin Jilan anger +10, Tang Mingyue anger +10. Emotional points jumped to 66. Looking at the two women who looked like mad women, I couldn't help but laugh. At a time like this, they still wanted to act like top stars. I ignored their roars and strode straight to the warehouse entrance, grabbed the rolling shutter door and yanked hard. Rattle clang. The shutter door came crashing down, cutting off the dangerous world outside. The light inside the warehouse instantly dimmed. This sudden darkness and confinement extinguished the mother and daughter's anger, replacing it with fear. Qin Jilan fear +5, Tang Mingyue fear +5. Emotional points 76, only 24 away from unlocking the shop. Why did you close the door? Qin Jilan subconsciously pulled her daughter close, and the two huddled together warily, staring at me. Tang Mingyue's voice changed pitch. Jiang Bai, I'm warning you. If you dare touch even a hair on us, I will never let you get away with it, and I'll send you to prison. Prison? I snorted. Instead of threatening me here, why not look at your phone? I said slowly, go check the news, see what's really happening outside. Still dreaming of being top-tier stars? Wake up. The apocalypse may have already fucking arrived. At a time like this, can your backers still manage anything? Tang Mingyue frantically fumbled her phone out of her limited edition LV bag. And Qin Jilan leaned over too. Tang Mingyue shock +1. Qin Jilan shock +1. Tang Mingyue fear +1. Qin Jilan fear +1. The system notification kept sounding at a delightfully brisk pace. Watching the mother and daughter growing paler and trembling all over, I felt not the slightest pity. I've had a lot of contact with them, so I know what kind of people they are. They flatter the powerful and bully the weak. Letters from fans get tossed into the trash on the spot. Only valuable jewelry gets taken home. Besides a pretty face, they have no merits at all. Their fear mainly comes from the phone news, but since it started because of me, the emotional points naturally count toward me. In 2 minutes, I gained another 23 points. Current total emotional points, 99. Only 1 point left before unlocking. My heartbeat sped up, and I stared intently at the two of them, as if admiring two hens that lay golden eggs. Come on, be a little more afraid, a little more shocked. Then, it stopped, stuck at 99 points. That feeling was like being almost at the brink of perfect bliss, with every cell in my body shouting to charge ahead, only for someone to knock on the door and force it all back down. I looked at the mother and daughter, frozen stiff like wooden chickens. They were clearly terrified silly by the information overload, their emotional threshold maxed out. I didn't have the patience to wait for them to recover. I walked up to them again. Only then did they snap back to their senses. What do you want now? Qin Xilan's voice trembled as she shielded her daughter behind her. I said nothing, just grinned and showed 2 rows of white teeth. Raised my hand, smack, smack. 2 more slaps, landing on the other half of their faces. The force was just right, stinging hot, but not enough to make them dizzy. Clear handprints appeared on the other half of both faces too. Now it was symmetrical. Tang Mingyue cried out, tears welling up again. Qin Xilan tilted her head, clutching her swollen face in disbelief. The anger was lit again, but even more it was frustration and fear. She hadn't done anything. Why was she being hit again? Qin Xilan anger +2, fear +1, happiness +1. Tang Mingyue anger +2, fear +3. Emotional points, 108. Finally broken through. Jiang Bai felt delighted. Qin Xilan contributed another 1 happiness point. This woman really needed a lesson. I walked to the depths of the warehouse, found a small stool, and sat down. On the surface, I appeared to close my eyes and rest, but in reality, my mind sank into my consciousness. Congratulations, host. Emotional points have reached 100, unlocking system functions. A simple translucent interface appeared, with 3 options. Attribute panel, storage space, system shop. The top right corner showed emotional points, 108. First, open the attribute panel. Host, Jiang Bai, that was it. Besides the name, there was nothing else. Close it, then open storage space. In the next second, my consciousness seemed to enter an immense void. A huge space of 10,000 cubic meters. Its length, width, and height far exceeded imagination. Empty, silent, and still. Damn, this is insane. What does 10,000 cubic meters mean? Enough to hold a massive amount of supplies. In the apocalypse, what that means goes without saying. Holding back my excitement, I opened the most important part, the system shop. It's divided into 3 major categories: food, weapons, abilities. I looked at the food first, and my eyes lit up. So cheap. 100 cases of mineral water, /1 emotional point. 100 bags of rice, 10 kilograms per bag, /1 emotional point. 10 kilograms of Australian Wagyu, /1 emotional point. 100 cases of self-heating hot pot, /1 emotional point. 100 kilograms of fresh apples, /1 emotional point. It was dazzlingly abundant. Staples, vegetables, fruits, meat, drinks, and even ready-made meal sets. Such as braised pork belly set meal, 100 servings, /1 emotional point. Towels, toothbrushes, body wash, and other daily necessities were in there too. Just 1 emotional point for a huge amount of supplies. The cost-performance ratio was absurdly high. It was basically unlimited supplies. Looking at the weapons category next, the prices were a bit higher, but still worth every penny. All-steel mountain cleaving saber, /2 emotional points. Desert Eagle, /5 emotional points, with 100 rounds of ammunition. AK-47 assault rifle, /10 emotional points, with 100 rounds of ammunition. High explosive grenade, /5 emotional points. From melee weapons to firearms, everything was available. There was also a large grayed-out area showing that 1,000 emotional points were required to unlock it. Last is the superpower category that gets my heart racing. Right now there is only one lit up. Superpower, physical enhancement, LV1, /50 emotion points. Description, comprehensive improvement of physical attributes such as strength, speed, stamina, and reflexes. Physical enhancement. I stared at this option with burning eyes. What matters most in the impending chaotic era? Power. Being strong yourself is the foundation. Otherwise, no matter how much supplies you have, without the ability to protect them, you're just making clothes for others. And with this price, it's completely affordable. Exchange for physical enhancement, LV1. I did not hesitate. 50 emotion points consumed. Remaining emotion points, 58. Exchange successful. Beginning fusion. A warm current suddenly appeared inside my body, quickly flowing to every limb and bone. Gentle yet powerful, wherever it passed. Muscle fibers were subtly torn apart and reassembled, bone density increased, and blood surged faster. A mix of soreness and comfort. After several dozen seconds, the warm current faded. I opened my eyes and felt that the whole world was different. My originally weak and exhausted body was now filled with explosive power, as if I had inexhaustible energy. My limbs were light, my senses unusually sharp. Looking down at my arms, I saw firm flesh and a visible muscle outline. I was completely transformed. Open the attribute panel again. Host, Jiang Bai, superpower, physical enhancement, LV1. Although there were no specific numbers, the feeling of truly becoming stronger was amazing. Feeling the surging power within me, I once again turned my gaze to the pitiful mother and daughter in the corner. These once high and mighty top-tier mother-daughter stars who used to boss me around were nothing in my eyes now. In the past, I worked for you and lived off your moods. Now, the tables have turned. I chuckled, stood up, and stretched my muscles and bones. My joints crackled sharply, especially clear in the warehouse. The sound startled the 2 women, who looked up in fear. And seeing how my temperament had changed, they were like startled rabbits. What do you want to do? Qin Jilan forced herself to stay calm. Tang Mingyue even buried her face in her mother's arms, not daring to look at me. I didn't answer and walked toward them step by step. My strengthened body carried an invisible pressure with every step. When I reached them, I looked down at them from above. These once glorious top stars now had swollen cheeks, fearful eyes, and looked utterly miserable. What do you think? I said, my voice calm. Qin Jilan's heart pounded wildly, but the ability she had honed through years in the entertainment industry made her take a sharp breath and say sternly, Jiang Bai, I advise you not to kick people when they're down. Once this meteor storm passes, it will still be a society under the rule of law. What you've done to us today, I'll mobilize all resources and power to have you arrested and sentenced, and you'll rot in prison for life. The more she spoke, the more excited she became. My fans and Mingyue's fans together number over 100 million. As long as today's incident is exposed and fans unleash online abuse on you, even their spit can drown you and your family. Tang Mingyue, as if grabbing a lifeline, echoed, yes. May you and your whole family die horribly. No one knows what extreme things that bunch of lunatic fans of mine might do. Hearing this threat, I first froze, then burst out laughing as if I'd heard the biggest joke in the world. Ha! Ha! My shoulders were shaking with laughter. What Qin Jilan said had some merit. Although these meteors were dense and terrifying, they still lacked the final push to instantly and completely destroy the core structure of human civilization. The governments and armies of various countries were still functioning, and the collapse of order would take time, not happen instantly. So what if it wasn't truly the end of the world? I stopped laughing and looked at them with a superior, condescending gaze. I already have the system, and you still want to play by the old rules? From now on, the rules will be set by me. As for online abuse, a mocking smile curled at my lips. Sorry, I'm afraid I have to disappoint you. I'm an orphan, a lone bachelor with no ties. You've got 100 million fans. If you've got the guts, go harass my parents in the underworld. I don't even remember what they look like. These words were like ice water, instantly extinguishing the faint spark of hope that had just risen in the two of them. A person with no ties at all can't be hurt by this kind of thing. Just as I was about to grab someone at random to have some fun, bang, bang, bang. Urgent pounding on the door, mixed with a man's terrified shouts, came from outside the rolling shutter door. Help! I know someone's in there. The three people in the warehouse all turned to look at the rolling shutter door. I frowned. Damn it, you're ruining my fun. I quickly walked to the door and pulled the shutter up to about a person's height. A middle-aged man wearing a director's vest and with a slightly pudgy build looked terrified, glancing back from time to time. I recognized the face that often appeared in entertainment news, TV drama director Guo Zhangping. Director Guo? Qin Jilan blurted out subconsciously. Thank you. Guo Zhangping looked at me and stammered his thanks. Guo Zhangping excitement, +5. His eyes flicked to Qin Jilan and Tang Mingyue by the car behind me, and he looked shocked. Miss Qin? Tang Mingyue, why are you? Before he could finish, my expression had already turned extremely grim. I looked past him and made out the scene about 50 meters outside the door. A monster about the size of a sedan, covered entirely in dark red armor-like carapace and shaped like a beetle, was brandishing sickle-like limbs and charging menacingly toward the warehouse. Farther away, several similar crimson beetles were also chasing fleeing crowds. So the screams we heard in the warehouse earlier weren't caused only by the meteorites. It was these monsters. Fuck. My rage shot straight to the top. That damn Guo Zhangping, for the sake of saving his own skin, had directly led this terrifying monster to the warehouse. I didn't think twice. While Guo Zhangping was still stunned at seeing the mother and daughter, a kick imbued with the tremendous force gained from bodily enhancement had already slammed hard into his chest. Bang! With a dull thud, Guo Zhangping didn't even have time to react before his whole body was sent flying several meters. PFF, he spat out a mouthful of blood, and the pain made him curl into a ball. This sudden violence stunned everyone in the warehouse. Guo Zhangping shock +5, fear +5. Qin Jilan shock +2, fear +3. Tang Mingyue shock +2, fear +4. The mother and daughter stared wide-eyed at me in disbelief, never expecting me to be so ruthless. Tang Mingyue screamed, Jiang Bai, you're finished. This is absolutely intentional assault. You're going to jail. I turned back and glared at her like she was an idiot, cursing. I fuck your mother. You fucking idiot. Open your goddamn eyes and look clearly. What did he bring here? Qin Jilan and Tang Mingyue were stunned by the scolding and subconsciously followed where I was pointing, looking outside the door. They saw that huge, ferocious-looking crimson beetle. Both mother and daughter let out terrified screams at the same time, their faces instantly turning ghostly white. A massive fear instantly swallowed them. Their hatred for Guo Zhangping immediately overpowered their dissatisfaction with me for taking action. Qin Jilan pointed at Guo Zhangping, who was spitting blood on the ground, and shrieked in rage, Guo Zhangping, you bastard! How could you bring the monster here? Do you have any shame? Tang Mingyue also cursed. Are you trying to kill us? You bastard! Guo Zhangping was in agony and terrified, and being cursed at like that made him so angry that another mouthful of blood surged up. He nearly passed out. And in just those few sentences, the crimson beetle had already charged to less than 20 meters from the warehouse door. It was clearly treating the people in the warehouse as prey, letting out a piercing screech as it accelerated forward, the ground trembling faintly. I had no time to waste words. Exchange for an AK-47. I gave the system the order in my mind. Consume 10 emotion points to exchange for one AK-47 assault rifle, with 100 rounds of 7.62mm ammunition included. The moment the exchange was completed, the way to use the AK-47 and its shooting techniques flooded into my mind like a sudden enlightenment, as if I had handled this gun tens of thousands of times. Under the incredulous gazes of Qin Zhilan, Tang Mingyue, and Guo Zhanpeng, an AK appeared out of thin air in my hand. A gun? Where did he get a gun? That thought flashed through all three of their minds at once. But I had no time to care about their shock. With practiced ease, I racked the bolt and chambered around, my expression calm, and quickly aimed at the red armored beetle that had rushed to within 10 meters. Did-it-up. Rapid bursts rang out in the warehouse, deafening, while hot shell casings tinkled to the ground. The 7.62mm bullets, carrying tremendous kinetic energy, slammed hard into the red-armored beetle's thick carapace. What made my pupils constrict was that bullets capable of piercing ordinary steel plate only sent up tiny sparks when they hit the carapace, getting stuck after burrowing in more than 10 centimeters, harmless to its massive body. Fuck, it's that hard? I was startled inwardly. Hiss. The painful red-armored beetle let out an angry screech, its charge even faster now, its forelegs raised high. Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue screamed in terror and clung to each other, eyes shut tight. Guo Zhanpeng was ashen-faced. At this critical moment, my enhanced body gave me an inhuman level of calm and control. I took a deep breath, suppressing my shock, slightly lowering the muzzle, no longer firing blindly at the carapace, but locking onto the pair of eyes on the red-armored beetle's head. If the carapace was too hard, then shoot the eyes. I held my breath, using my enhanced physical condition to control the gun's recoil. Did-it-up. This time, the bullets no longer scattered, but concentrated on the red-armored beetle's right eye. Uft, uft. The bullets drilled into the relatively fragile eye area. The red-armored beetle let out a shrill howl, its charge suddenly faltering as it frantically shook its head. It worked. I was greatly encouraged and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Did-it-da-da. The remaining bullets were all poured into the red-armored beetle's head, especially the eye area, with astonishing control. Dozens of 7.62mm bullets, concentrated on a single point, crazily poured into the red-armored beetle's brain. Its struggling grew weaker and weaker, and it finally crashed to the ground at the warehouse entrance, twitching a few times before going still. Dead. That terrifying monster had been killed by me with a gun that appeared out of nowhere. Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue collapsed to the ground, drenched in cold sweat, looking at my back as I stood with the gun at the doorway. Their eyes filled with relief and fear. Guo Zhanpeng was even more terrified to the core. In his eyes now, I was more terrifying than those monsters outside. I didn't relax my guard, quickly changed the magazine, and kept the muzzle pointed outside while watching carefully. For the moment, no other red-armored beetles seemed to notice this side. Only then did I relax a little, a surge of pleasure rising in my heart. Walking over to the red-armored beetle's corpse, I kicked its hard carapace and confirmed it was completely dead. Looks like this apocalypse is even more interesting than I imagined. I muttered to myself, excitement flashing in my eyes. With my terrifying physical condition, I can concentrate the bullets into one point and increase their power. But for ordinary soldiers, killing this kind of monster is difficult. The excitement was quickly replaced by anger as my gaze swept across the inside of the warehouse. Guo Zhanpeng was trying to crawl deeper into a corner. That kick of mine definitely broke several of his ribs. At this moment, where was the usual swagger he had on set, throwing his weight around and bossing around minor celebrities? Damn it! I cursed under my breath, my eyes icy. If I hadn't just activated the system, then with this bastard's act of luring the monster over, everyone in the warehouse would have become red-armored beetle food. Carrying the AK, I walked toward Guo Zhanpeng step by step. Hearing the approaching footsteps, he struggled to lift his head. When he saw my cold gaze and the dark gun barrel, his whole body shuddered. But the arrogance bred by holding a high position for so long and being fawned over by countless people was not so easily changed. You, what are you trying to do? I'm warning you. I haven't even settled the score with you for kicking me just now. Do you know who I am? Believe it or not, with just one word from me, I can make you. Smack. I had no interest in listening to his nonsense and directly lifted my foot, stepping on that greasy face of his. MMPH. Ugh. Guo Zhanpeng was stepped on so hard he couldn't speak. I bent down slightly, a mocking sneer on my face. Director Guo, it seems you still haven't figured out the situation. Do you know that because you lured the monster over, you almost got us all killed? My gaze flicked toward Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue. That one glance instantly woke the mother and daughter up. Right. It was all this Guo Zhangping's fault. If not for Jiang Bai just now, they would probably already have. Qin Zhilan was the first to explode, pointing at Guo Zhangping and cursing, "Guo Zhangping, if you want to die, don't drag us down with you. How can you be so vicious?" Tang Mingyue also joined in angrily. "Exactly, you almost got us killed. Jiang Bai, teach him a lesson so he'll remember it." With the mother and daughter backing me up, the smile on my face turned even colder. I slowly pressed the still hot muzzle of the AK against Guo Zhangping's forehead. Guo Zhangping's whole body stiffened. Don't shoot. Brother, calm down, calm down. Money. I have money. I'll give you however much you want. 1 million? 10 million? Name your price." Seeing that I showed no interest at all, he hurriedly shouted again. "I still have several S+ level big budget TV dramas under me. I'll give you the male lead. You look handsome even without makeup, and you're tall too. I guarantee you'll become an overnight sensation and rise to the top. Qin Zhilan, Tang Mingyue, hurry and say something for me. We're all people in the same circle." Guo Zhangping rambled incoherently, trying to grasp at any possible lifeline. The mother and daughter moved a little closer, and Tang Mingyue muttered softly in Qin Zhilan's ear, "Mom, Jiang Bai probably won't really shoot, right?" Qin Zhilan looked at Jiang Bai, uncertain as well. "Probably not, right? He's just scaring him a little. Murder is a serious crime. It means paying with your life." However, before her words had even fully fallen, bang, a deafening gunshot rang out. Guo Zhangping's voice came to an abrupt stop. His eyes bulged wide open, and right in the center of his forehead, a bloody hole appeared. Blood mixed with some indescribable substance slowly trickled down. And murder. After a brief dead silence came the mother and daughter's heart-rending screams. The way they looked at Jiang Bai was as if they were looking at a demon that had crawled out of hell. He actually fired. Right in front of them, he killed Guo Zhangping without the slightest hesitation. This was murder. Was there no law left at all? Jiang Bai slowly stood up, coldly glanced at Guo Zhangping's corpse, then cast a look at the screaming mother and daughter. "Shut up. If you want to die, then keep screaming and draw all those monsters outside in. I don't mind sending you both to keep Director Guo company." These words were more effective than anything else. The mother and daughter's screams abruptly stopped. They clamped a hand over their mouths tightly, tears streaming uncontrollably, but they no longer dared make a sound. Jiang Bai no longer paid them any attention. He walked to Guo Zhangping's corpse, raised his foot, and kicked the famous director's body out through the warehouse door. In this world, any idiot who threatens me ends up like this. Then, under Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue's even more shocked gazes, Jiang Bai walked over to the massive corpse of that red-armored beetle and reached out to touch it. The next second, the corpse of the red-armored beetle, bigger than a compact car, vanished into thin air just like that. Where did the monster go?" Tang Mingyue said, covering her mouth. Qin Zhilan also felt a chill run through her. Jiang Bai could not only conjure a gun out of thin air, he could make things disappear too? Who exactly was he? Jiang Bai had no interest in explaining to them. He walked to the warehouse entrance and cautiously checked outside. The meteor shower seemed to have become somewhat sparser, but explosions, monster screeches, and human screams could still be heard. For the time being, no other red-armored beetles or people had noticed this warehouse. He once again forcefully pulled down the heavy rolling shutter door. Only then did they suddenly realize, from this abrupt sense of enclosure, that the most dangerous thing now was not the meteors and monsters outside. It was Jiang Bai in the warehouse, who had just killed someone and whose methods were unfathomably strange. "Open the door." Tang Mingyue mustered her courage and shouted. Jiang Bai laughed as if he'd heard a joke. "Sure, I'll open the door. Why don't you go out?" Looking at the tightly shut rolling shutter door and thinking of the terrifying monsters and meteors, Tang Mingyue's face went pale, and she immediately dared not make another sound. "Go out. That wouldn't be suicide." Distracted by the farce Guo Zhangping had stirred up, and after killing a person himself, the evil fire in Jiang Bai's heart had also dissipated quite a bit. Now, what he felt more strongly was a sense of emptiness and hunger. Perhaps it had something to do with having gained a special ability. He raised his wrist and looked at his watch. It was already past 6 in the evening. After hastily eating a few bites at noon, he had hurried off to pick up Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue. He had originally planned to deliver them to the film base around 5, then find somewhere nearby to deal with dinner himself. Who could have thought he'd run straight into the end of the world? He no longer hesitated and went straight to a relatively open spot in the middle of the warehouse. He moved a sturdy prop wooden crate over as a makeshift table, then pulled over a crew folding chair and sat down comfortably. Seeing Jiang Bai do this, Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue both let out a breath of relief. Tang Mingyue was still young and might not fully understand. But Qin Zhilan, who had been in the entertainment industry for many years, had just seen that primal desire in Jiang Bai's eyes. Now that he seemed to have temporarily lost interest in that area, she let go of half the worry in her heart. Suddenly, gurgle, a clear sound came from Tang Mingyue's stomach. Tang Mingyue's face instantly flushed red, so embarrassed she wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Immediately afterward, as if in a chain reaction, gurgle, Qin Zhilan's stomach also let out an undignified growl. This top-tier beauty, who always paid attention to poise and grace, also had a blush rise on her cheeks. As a female celebrity, maintaining her figure was basic discipline. They had long been used to dieting and usually ate very little. But what they'd experienced today was truly too intense. First came the meteor strike, a life-or-death chase. Then Jiang Bai threatened them. Witnessed murder and monsters with their own eyes. This whole chain of emotional upheavals took a huge toll on both body and mind, and they hadn't eaten lunch to begin with. At this moment, Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue were practically starving out of their minds. Just then, an extremely enticing aroma suddenly hit them. It was spicy crayfish. The rich, numbing fragrance of Sichuan peppercorns and chili peppers mixed with the pungent aroma of various spices. Over by Jiang Bai, as if by magic, 3 huge basins of spicy crayfish had appeared out of thin air, red, glossy with oil, and piled up like little mountains. Each crayfish was plump and coated in sauce, making them look utterly mouth-watering. Then, 2 bottles of ice-cold Coke with frosty chill rising from them were placed on the wooden crate. Naturally, Jiang Bai had exchanged these using emotion points. 100 spicy crayfish combo meals, /1 emotion point 100 cases of 500 milliliters iced Coke, /1 emotion point so cheap, it was outrageous. Awesome. Looking at the mother and daughter, Jiang Bai revealed a teasing smile. He picked up a plump crayfish and waved it in front of them. Want to eat? Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue's hearts suddenly skipped a beat, as humiliation and anticipation surged up together. Seeing how they wanted to nod but didn't dare, their eyes fixed stubbornly on the crayfish, Jiang Bai found it truly amusing. He smiled faintly and beckoned to them. Come here. Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue exchanged a glance. What did he mean by this? Could it be that he had reverted to his old nature as a driver, coming when called and leaving when dismissed? Did he think it was time to wait on them again? With unease, fear, and longing, the mother and daughter walked over to Jiang Bai. The closer they got, the more soul-hooking that spicy, savory aroma became. Sit. Jiang Bai pointed with his chin at a few small stools stacked nearby and said gently, there are stools over there too. The mother and daughter silently moved over 2 chairs and sat down. Their eyes could not move away from the 3 large basins of oily, bright red crayfish. Jiang Bai casually tossed over 2 pairs of disposable plastic gloves. Here, put these on. Tang Mingyue's eyes instinctively lit up. Could it be he was letting them eat too? She revealed a sweet smile and said, Jiang Bai, you're pretty considerate after all. Hearing this, Jiang Bai let out a scoff. He looked Tang Mingyue over and had to admit that this girl really was naturally beautiful. Even with her cheeks flushed now, those big eyes still streaked with tears remained pitifully lovely. She was far too beautiful. No wonder she could become a top-tier young star. Unfortunately, she wasn't too bright. What are you thinking? A smile curled at the corner of Jiang Bai's mouth. I'm having you help me peel the crayfish meat out and put it into whichever basin. Remember, no sneaking any bites. Otherwise, As he spoke, his gaze meaningfully lowered, glancing at the AK by his feet. The mother and daughter's expressions instantly froze. From shock to disbelief to humiliated anger, their expressions were wonderfully varied. As expected of actresses. Have them peel shrimp for him? When had they ever been subjected to this kind of treatment? Qin Zhilan's chest heaved violently, ample in scale. Tang Mingyue almost burst into tears again. This felt even more humiliating to her than being slapped across the face. But they glanced at the cold firearm, then thought of Guozhanping. Circumstances are stronger than people. Fine. Qin Zhilan was the first to pick up the gloves and silently put them on. Her hands were extremely well cared for, fair and slender, yet now they were being used for this kind of task. Seeing that even her mother had yielded, Tang Mingyue could only put on the gloves tearfully, looking aggrieved. The mother and daughter took a deep breath, reached out to pick up the scalding, greasy crayfish from the basin, and began awkwardly peeling them. Their movements were very clumsy. Obviously, they were the kind of people who were used to being served. How could they ever have done this? Jiang Bai did not urge them. He just leaned back leisurely in the folding chair, crossed his legs, opened a chilled cola, gulped down several big mouthfuls, and let out a satisfied sigh. Qin Jilan anger +1, humiliation +1, Tang Mingyue anger +1, humiliation +1. The system notification sound started ringing in Jiang Bai's mind again. Clearly, although this mother-daughter pair were working with their hands, in their hearts they must have already cursed him 1,000 times over. But it didn't matter. The harder they cursed, the more emotion points he got. Jiang Bai glanced at the system interface. The emotion points had already increased quite a bit from before, reaching a full 149 points. Not bad. His mood grew even more pleasant. While enjoying the servant's service, he scrolled through his phone. The situation outside was far worse than he had imagined. The meteor shower in many places seemed to be gradually dying down, but in its place were more, even more terrifying insects. The news footage and videos circulating online were shocking. Besides the kind of red-armored beetle he had encountered, there were also larger blue-black beetles with greater destructive power. Even more chilling was the fact that flying insects as large as fighter jets had even appeared in the sky. They moved as fast as lightning, and their sharp mouthparts and claws could easily tear through the outer walls of buildings to capture humans. And those densely populated big cities faced threats far more terrifying than the outskirts of this film base on his side. Not only were the meteorites larger and denser, and more persistent, the number of insects also grew at an exponential rate. The army had already been deployed, but in the face of the initial chaos and these unprecedented monsters, they also seemed to be mired in a hard fight. Communication came and went, and pleas for help and cries of despair kept pouring in on the internet. Truly terrifying, Jiang Bai muttered to himself, but his eyes grew even brighter. Troubled times give rise to heroes. No, to ruthless overlords. He raised his head and looked at the mother and daughter, who were busily working. Qin Jilan, at this moment, had her lips tightly pressed together, even while peeling shrimp. She still could not hide that mature allure. Her long legs, wrapped in black stockings, were pressed together at an angle, and her waist-hip curve looked even fuller and more enticing while seated. As for Tang Mingyue, her innocent face was still streaked with tears that had not yet dried. The collar of her white dress had picked up a little oil stain, making her look even more pitiable. Watching this top-tier mother and daughter, who used to order him around, now having to swallow their anger and peel shrimp for him, a huge sense of satisfaction surged in Jiang Bai's heart. When he was the driver, he had suffered plenty of this difficult mother-daughter pair's temper. If tea and water were served a little slowly, he'd get scolded. If the air conditioner temperature wasn't right, he'd get scolded. Even when his mom was mocked by black fans, they could still pin the blame on him. Now then, it was his turn. Jiang Bai continued gathering outside information for more than 10 minutes. Only then did the mother and daughter finally, with much stumbling, finish peeling all 3 large basins of crayfish. One basin was piled high with peeled shrimp meat, while the other 2 were piled high with shells, all heaped to the brim. Keeping their heads down for so long had made their necks ache. Looking at that huge basin of tender, tempting shrimp meat, they swallowed unconsciously at the same time, still clinging to a sliver of hope. After peeling so much, he should share a little with us, right? Even if it's just a tiny bit. However, reality was cruel. Jiang Bai nodded in satisfaction, then pulled the large basin of shrimp meat, which had condensed the sweat and toil of the mother and daughter, over to himself. He grabbed a big handful of shrimp meat and stuffed it straight into his mouth. Not bad. He chewed, deliberately making a satisfied sound. Then he ate one mouthful after another, thoroughly enjoying himself. Qin Jilan and Tang Mingyue could only watch helplessly. The huge basin of crab meat shrank at a visible speed. Their eyes were practically going straight, and saliva was wildly flooding their mouths. Qin Jilan anger +2. Resentment +1. Tang Mingyue anger +2. Resentment +1. Emotion points continued to come in steadily. Jiang Bai ate even more deliciously. It has to be said that this crayfish from the system is truly amazing. The meat is firm and springy, spicy and fragrant, with an endless aftertaste. The enhanced body's appetite really was much bigger, but crayfish are still something you get tired of if you eat too much. Besides, they're all high in protein and not very easy to digest. Soon, only a dozen or so pieces of meat remained at the bottom of the basin. Could it be? Qin Jilan and Tang Mingyue's gazes unconsciously focused on that bit of leftovers. Although they were extremely resistant to the fact that it was what someone else had left behind, the instinct of hunger made their hearts start beating disappointingly again. Under their expectant gazes, Jiang Bai merely glanced casually at that bit of leftover crayfish, and then, with a wave of his hand, even the basin and the dozen or so pieces of meat inside vanished into thin air, collected into his system space. Qin Jilan shock +2, despair plus 2, anger plus 2, Tang Mingyue shock plus 2, despair plus 2, anger plus 3. The expressions on the mother and daughter's faces froze instantly, from anticipation to bewilderment, and then to utter despair and anger, like riding a roller coaster. He would rather put it away than let them eat it? Belched Jiang Bai let out a burp, took a tissue, and wiped his mouth and hands. Feeling utterly refreshed, this meal not only left him full and satisfied, but also let him harvest another wave of rich emotion points. Clean the table, he instructed the still-dazed mother and daughter. His tone matter-of-fact. Qin Jilan and Tang Mingyue shivered. Grudgingly, they picked up tissues and wiped away the oil stains and bits of crab shell scattered on the wooden box table. Jiang Bai directly propped his feet up on the just-cleaned table, leaned back in the folding chair, rested his hands behind his head, and began thinking about the next plan. It's definitely still chaotic outside right now. The meteorites may have become sparse, but those bugs are a huge problem. Before confirming that the outside is relatively safe, or that I'm strong enough myself, this warehouse will be a temporary base, and they can't just go out casually. How does that saying go? Full belly and warm body. After eating and drinking his fill, it was temporarily safe. After Jiang Bai's body was enhanced, that vigorous energy seemed to have nowhere to go. His gaze once again fell on the beautiful mother and daughter pair in front of him, both trembling. Even in her current wretched state, Qin Jilan could not hide her alluring mature charm. She was like a ripe peach, full of juice and exuding a tempting fragrance. Tang Mingyue, however, was entirely a different kind of charm. Just turned 18, she was like a newly blossomed white flower, fresh and pure. The evil fire in Jiang Bai's heart flared up again in a rush, even more intense than before. He put down his feet, sat upright, and swept his burning gaze back and forth over Qin Jilan and Tang Mingyue. What are you trying to do again? Qin Jilan's voice trembled. Tang Mingyue was terrified too, clinging tightly to her mother. Jiang Bai said nothing, only slowly stood up, glancing over at the two of them. His eyes openly traveled over their bodies. Very nice, very pretty. Just now I saw you looking at your phones, Jiang Bai said, breaking the silence in the warehouse. You should know what's going on outside now, right? Qin Jilan and Tang Mingyue were silent for a moment, then nodded. Tang Mingyue even, with a bit of luck and in order to maintain her fan base, posted a Weibo update shortly after hiding in the warehouse, saying she was safe. The accompanying photo showed the chaotic scene outside the car window. The caption read, "An unexpected situation has occurred. We're temporarily safe. Everyone please don't worry." If it were usual, with her popularity, a Weibo post like this would get over 10,000 likes and comments within a minute, and would immediately shoot to the top of the trending list. But she had just secretly taken a look. Half an hour had passed since this Weibo post went out, and it had only gotten a few thousand likes. Most of the fans in the comments were also talking about their own frightening experiences, or asking about conditions in other places. The buzz was far from what it had been before. The situation outside was countless times worse than what they could see. Meteorites, monsters, chaos, death. Qin Jilan also used her connections to send help requests to several big shots she usually had close business dealings with. But the result was either no response at all, with no news whatsoever, or they only replied with a few words about barely keeping themselves afloat and waiting for official rescue, then nothing further. Looking at the two who remained silent, a mocking smile curled at the corner of Jiang Bai's mouth. He looked down. Qin Jilan and Tang Mingyue also instinctively followed his gaze. In an instant, their faces became incomparably complicated. Shame, anger, fear, panic, all mixed together. Jiang Bai spoke very bluntly, even crudely. "Someone, come keep me company." These blunt words instantly ignited Tang Mingyue. She abruptly raised her head and glared at Jiang Bai. "Jiang Bai, don't get smug just because you've gotten lucky. Do you think that with a gun, you can run wild? You're shameless. Lewd." However, her angry rebuke came to an abrupt halt when she saw Jiang Bai's hand slowly lift. She swallowed the rest of her words hard and instinctively shrank her neck. After all, her face still hurt like hell. Jiang Bai nodded in satisfaction and lowered his hand. That's more like it. He was a peace-loving person and didn't want to keep using violence either. Besides, right now only Tang Mingyue and Qin Jilan were producing stable emotional points. If he really beat Tang Mingyue hard enough to make her question life itself, or even despair and think of suicide, then if Qin Jilan, as the mother, followed along and tried to die too, wouldn't he have lost two high-quality sources of emotional points for nothing, plus future fun? More than that, he would be taking them soon. A prettier face was more pleasing to the eye. Thinking of this, Jiang Bai changed tactics and said in a seductive tone, "So, For the sake of your so-called chastity, you're going to keep starving? Look at you now. You're so hungry your chest is almost touching your back, right? Do you really still naively think those brainless fans outside will disregard the danger, break through the meteorites and monsters, and come here to bring you food? Halfway through speaking, Jiang Bai had a thought. Whoosh! The spicy crayfish dish that had just disappeared, with only a dozen or so pieces of shrimp meat left, appeared again on the wooden box. At the same time, 2 bottles of exquisitely packaged Evian mineral water, with droplets condensed on the bottles, also appeared. The rich, tempting spicy aroma once again assaulted Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue's senses. Gurgle, gurgle, the mother and daughter's stomachs let out loud protests again, unwillingly. Their eyes were fixed on the shrimp meat soaked in red oil and the crystal-clear water bottles. Their throats bobbed uncontrollably, and saliva surged wildly in their mouths. So hungry, so thirsty, especially that ice-cold water, for the both hungry and thirsty. For them, who had also just gone through a huge emotional upheaval, the temptation was even greater than the food. However, their reason and the pride they had cultivated over the years still made them hesitate, unable to take that step. Seeing them like this, clearly yearning to the extreme, yet still struggling, Jiang Bai's expression darkened, and his tone turned cold. You're still pretending to be high and mighty here? Do you really think you're some pure and spotless White Lotus? When it came to getting resources, why didn't I see you hesitating like this? Nonsense. Tang Mingyue trembled with rage, little pearls beginning to fall downward. Qin Zhilan suddenly raised her head, her face filled with the fury of being insulted, her voice agitated. Jiang Bai, you can insult our current situation, but you cannot slander our innocence out of thin air. In my entire life, Qin Zhilan, aside from Mingyue's father, I have never had relations with any other man. Our Mingyue is even more untouched. How can you spout such nonsense and insult people? She said this with absolute firmness. Oh, after hearing this, Jiang Bai instead found it amusing. Stroking his chin, he sized up the mother and daughter again. At first, although he had been attracted by their beauty, the moment he thought of all the widely known filth and ugliness of the entertainment industry, he felt somewhat repulsed and disdainful, thinking they were nothing more than 2 canaries left over after others had played with them. But now, listening to Qin Zhilan's tone, it seemed they might really be a little different. This mother and daughter, in the chaotic entertainment industry, were actually still relatively conservative, especially Tang Mingyue. That was a bit beyond his expectations. However, it also made him a little more interested. I can't be bothered to waste words with you. Jiang Bai put away the teasing look on his face. Hurry up and decide. If you don't eat, I'll put it away immediately, and while I'm at it, I'll send you outside and let you fend for yourselves. I'm sure those hungry monsters outside would be very happy to welcome you 2 delicate-skinned big stars. Hearing this naked threat, and thinking of the hideous, terrifying red-armored insects outside the door, Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue's faces instantly turned deathly pale. Outside, there were man-eating monsters. If they went out, they would definitely die. If they didn't go out and stayed with Jiang Bai, they could still live. Qin Zhilan's body trembled slightly. She glanced at her daughter beside her, shaking in fear, and then at the food and water within arm's reach. In the end, the desire to survive, along with her instinct to protect her daughter, overpowered everything else. She took a deep breath and said in a dry voice, "Can you let us eat first, Mom?" Tang Mingyue suddenly turned her head, looking at Qin Zhilan in disbelief. Jiang Bai laughed. "Big sis, what are you thinking? It's spicy. Are you trying to make me hurt to death?" Tang Mingyue was young and seemed not to have fully understood the veiled hint yet. She only looked blankly at Jiang Bai, then at her mother. But Qin Zhilan, after all, was experienced, and instantly understood what Jiang Bai meant. A blush immediately rose to her cheeks. She bit her lower lip hard and fell silent for a few seconds, as if resigning herself to fate. "I understand." After saying that, under Tang Mingyue's shocked gaze, Qin Zhilan slowly stood up. She did not dare meet her daughter's eyes. Lowering her head, she asked Jiang Bai where. "Mom, no you can't." Tang Mingyue finally reacted. Qin Zhilan looked at her daughter, her eyes full of pain and helplessness. Tang Mingyue shock +10, despair +10, humiliation +10, Qin Zhilan humiliation +15, despair +10, resolve +5. Seeing that it was Qin Zhilan who took the initiative to step forward, Jiang Bai was a bit surprised at first, but then he understood. Besides, compared with Tang Mingyue, who was inexperienced and perhaps more troublesome, Qin Zhilan seemed like a more suitable choice. Although Tang Mingyue was inexperienced, she had a different kind of allure. But a mature beauty like Qin Zhilan would react more sensitively and richly emotionally. providing more substantial emotional points. Jiang Bai smiled playfully, his gaze sweeping over Qin Zhilan's plump figure. Right here. No. Qin Zhilan immediately refused. No matter how much she compromised, she could not accept doing it in front of her daughter, like a beast. Tang Mingyue was also like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, crying out sharply, Jiang Bai, don't push people too far. Are you even human? Jiang Bai let out a snort, turning his gaze to Tang Mingyue with mockery. When you used to boss me around, did you ever treat me like a person? When I treated you like a person, you didn't treat me like one. Now that's better. When I don't treat you like a person, you ask me whether I'm human. How cheap can you get? Jiang Bai paused, then continued to mock. Stop pretending, Miss Tang. If you really have that much backbone, you can leave the warehouse with your mom right now, and I definitely won't stop you. Maybe there are even your fans outside waiting to save you? Tang Mingyue was instantly speechless, only the tears of humiliation flowing even more fiercely. Tang Mingyue fear +2, humiliation +5, anger +2 seeing Tang Mingyue looking so pathetic. Jiang Bai smacked his lips in satisfaction, then said to Qin Zhilan, all right, go to the car. The backseat of the Cullinan is roomy enough. Qin Zhilan shuddered and lowered her head, preparing to walk over. Suddenly, Jiang Bai spoke up. Wait. The mother and daughter both froze at once, their hearts instantly rising to their throats. What now? Had this Jiang Bai changed his mind again and wanted to make an even more excessive demand? Thinking of this, Qin Zhilan's face turned as pale as paper, while Tang Mingyue was so frightened that her whole body trembled. Looking at how terrified they were, as if their souls were about to be scared out of their bodies, Jiang Bai secretly laughed. He was not in a hurry. There were more important things to do now. Under the mother and daughter's uncertain, suspicious gazes, Jiang Bai flipped his hand, and an ordinary little white medicine bottle appeared out of thin air in his hand. There was no label on the bottle, making it seem quite mysterious. This is... Qin Zhilan looked warily at the bottle. Jiang Bai smiled and said, don't be nervous, just a little safeguard. Since you've decided to follow me. Oh no, to live together, there has to be some rules. To make sure everyone is of one mind and won't stab each other in the back, right? He popped the cork, poured out 2 small white pills, and held them in his palm. This is a special kind of medicine. Jiang Bai was making it up on the spot, saying that after taking it, an antidote must be taken once every 7 days. Otherwise, the poison will flare up, your intestines will be pierced, and your belly will rot, and your whole body will ulcerate and ooze pus. And you will slowly die in extreme pain. The process will probably last more than 10 hours. TSK, that scene. He described it vividly. Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue instantly lost all color from their faces. Poison? He was actually going to poison them? No, I won't eat it. Tang Mingyue screamed as she backed away. Qin Zhilan also shook her head violently, her eyes full of resistance and fear. Jiang Bai, you can't do this. We've already surrendered. Why do you still need to use this method? Surrendered? Jiang Bai snorted. I don't like potential danger. You've seen some of my abilities too. I don't want a fourth person knowing about these things. At least not now. Who knows if one day you'll find a chance to sell me out. Eat it, and everyone can establish at least a little trust for the time being. He paused, his tone carrying a hint of teasing. Of course, you can also choose not to take it. Choose. Jiang Bai's voice was very calm, yet it weighed on Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue's hearts like a mountain. If they didn't take it, death was certain. If they took the pill, though they would be under someone else's control and their lives would be in his hands, at least they could stay alive. Besides, he said there was an antidote, once every 7 days. Qin Zhilan's chest heaved violently, as if all her strength had been drained away, and she spoke in a hoarse voice. I'll take it. Mom. Tang Mingyue looked at her in horror. Qin Zhilan patted her daughter's hand, then took a deep breath and walked up to Jiang Bai. She looked at the small white pill, fear in her eyes. In the end, she gritted her teeth and shut her eyes. She put the pill into her mouth and swallowed it. Nothing happened. The poison did not take effect immediately, and there was no special sensation either. Your turn. Jiang Bai looked at Tang Mingyue and shook the only remaining pill in his hand. Extremely unwilling, Tang Mingyue stretched out her hand, picked up the pill, and swallowed it. Because she swallowed too hastily, she even choked and coughed a few times. Seeing that both mother and daughter had finished taking the poison, Jiang Bai nodded in satisfaction. Very good. The first step of self-protection was complete. Of course, this was not poison at all. It was just ordinary anti-inflammatory medicine that he had exchanged from the system shop with emotion points. But it was more than enough to bluff this foolish mother and daughter, at least until he possessed absolutely overwhelming strength and no longer feared his secrets being exposed. This could save him a lot of trouble. Very good. It seems we have reached a preliminary consensus. Jiang Bai clapped his hands. After saying that, he ignored them and walked straight toward the colonnade. He pulled open the rear door, then looked back at Qin Jilan. The meaning was self-evident. What was supposed to come had finally come. Qin Jilan walked to the car, hesitated for a moment, then bent down and got in. Tang Minghua looked at Qin Jilan's back, wanting to say something, but in the end she only bit her lip hard and turned her head away, unable to bear watching any longer. Jiang Bai got in after her and casually closed the car door. Tang Minghua was left alone in the empty warehouse, listening to the faint sounds that made one blush, feeling only that time was passing unbearably slowly. Tang Minghua anger +5, shame +5, resentment +5. Inside the colonnade, the space was indeed roomy. And Jiang Bai also realized that this 37-year-old actress's real figure was far more breathtaking than it appeared. Full and pert where it should be, slender enough to fit in one hand where it should be. Her skin was unbelievably fine and smooth, with almost no trace of age to be seen, only an utterly mature charm. Moreover, her whole body was fragrant. The parts that should smell good smelled good, and even the parts that shouldn't were fragrant too. Jiang Bai couldn't understand why. Anyway, it was quite appetizing. More than 2 hours later, the colonnade finally became completely still. Jiang Bai leaned back against the wide, comfortable rear seat and let out a long breath. After his physical body was enhanced, his ability in this regard was also terrifying. If Qin Jilan had not almost fainted at the end, he probably could have gone another round. Jiang Bai lay there, while Qin Jilan lay limply sprawled on top of him, her head resting on his shoulder, strands of hair stuck to her cheeks. Jiang Bai could not help reaching out to caress her. What met his hand was smooth, slick skin, and he sighed inwardly. A star is indeed a star. The millions spent on maintenance every year were truly not wasted. Qin Jilan was 37, yet looked only in her early 30s. With skin in this condition, even though she had given birth, she far surpassed those young beauties he had dated before. Even details like her ankles and heels showed not a trace of dead skin, moist and supple like a young girl. Sob. Qin Jilan in his arms couldn't help but start sobbing softly, letting out whimpering cries. Smack. Jiang Bai found it a bit irritating to listen to, so he gave her a light slap. That's about enough. Stop acting coy after getting the better end of the deal. Jiang Bai's tone was teasing. I'm 23 this year, in the prime of my youth, and you, an old broad, are robbing the cradle with me, yet I haven't said anything. What's more, that wasn't how you were just now. You bastard. Qin Jilan trembled all over with anger at his words, raised her head, and glared at him through tear-filled eyes. Qin Jilan, shame and indignation +5, humiliation +2, anger +2. Jiang Bai couldn't be bothered with her. With a thought, he checked the system interface. And when he looked, damn, his emotion points had directly skyrocketed to 1024 points. From this one battle alone, mainly thanks to contributions from Qin Jilan and Tang Minghua outside the warehouse, he gained nearly 700 points. Qin Jilan really was a woman with extremely rich emotions. All kinds of positive and negative emotions intertwined and erupted, making her practically an emotion point ATM. Moreover, the number 1024 happened to unlock the previously grayed out section in the system shop. Jiang Bai eagerly clicked Open System Shop. Sure enough, under the Weapons and Abilities categories, part of the originally large gray area lit up. New options appeared in the Weapons category. Individual Rocket Launcher, /100 emotion points. Note, comes with 3 rockets M24 Sniper Rifle, /50 emotion points. Note, comes with 50 rounds of 7.62mm Sniper Ammunition Alloy, Tactical Machete, /10 emotion points. High Strength Fiber Bulletproof Vest, /20 emotion points. Abilities category. Ability, Physical Enhancement, LV2, /100 emotion points. Description, comprehensive improvement to physical qualities such as strength, speed, stamina, and reaction. After reaching 1,000 emotion points, he could actually upgrade the physical enhancement ability again. Although Jiang Bai hadn't used this ability in combat yet, the improvement had been huge during his friendly sparring with Qin Jilan just now. Besides that, there were also 2 new abilities. Ability, Dynamic Vision Enhancement, LV1, /50 emotion points. Description, greatly enhances visual tracking ability, allowing one to more clearly capture the trajectories of high-speed moving objects. Ability, Basic Self-Healing, LV1, /50 emotion points. Description, increases wound healing speed, with significant effects on minor injuries. Awesome. Jiang Bai was overjoyed. Rocket Launcher, Sniper Rifle, and new abilities too. His burning gaze swept over these newly unlocked goodies. And then he saw other items that were still locked. This time, it would take a full 10,000 emotion points to unlock them. Relying only on Qin Zhilan and Tang Mingyue, these two fairly useless female celebrities, would make it hard to solve the problem. Who says it can't solve the problem? Suddenly, an extremely evil thought emerged from the bottom of his heart. Qin Zhilan was a nationally renowned Best Actress, with countless fans and exalted status. If he took pictures of her, the sensation and emotional upheaval it caused would be massive. By then, wouldn't the emotion points surge like a volcanic eruption? The idea was shameless and despicable. But Jiang Bai had no feelings for Qin Zhilan, so he felt no psychological burden in doing such a thing. In the apocalypse, power is what matters most. As for morality, once he's invincible in the world, everyone will praise him as the human embodiment of truth, goodness, and beauty. No sooner said than done. Jiang Bai immediately took his phone out of the system space, turned on the camera, and switched it to selfie mode. On the phone screen was the image of him and Qin Zhilan as they were now. He leaned against the back of the chair, a trace of a wicked smile at the corner of his mouth. Qin Zhilan, meanwhile, had her back to the camera, with her smooth back and rounded shoulders exposed. Lying in his arms, her head resting on his shoulder, she looked weak and fragile, as if after being ravaged. The image was extremely striking. Jiang Bai adjusted the angle, making sure to capture some of Qin Zhilan's face as well. However, just as his finger was about to touch the screen, he suddenly noticed the status bar at the top of the phone screen. No service. The signal bars were completely empty. Jiang Bai frowned, exited the camera, and tried to open the browser. The page showed that it was unable to connect to the network. He quickly tapped open several commonly used apps, and every one of them showed a network connection failure message. Just a few hours ago, he could still browse the news and watch videos. Now, the network was completely cut off. Jiang Bai's heart suddenly sank. This meant that rescue information from official organizations might not be effectively transmitted. The speed at which social order was collapsing was probably far beyond his imagination. And his evil plan to harvest emotion points from all over the world had died before it even began. Damn it! Jiang Bai cursed softly and resentfully tossed the phone back into the system space. Qin Zhilan in his arms seemed to notice his movements and emotional change, shifting slightly, but she didn't dare ask anything. Jiang Bai lowered his head and looked at the soft, fragrant body in his arms, then glanced at Tang Mingyue in the corner of the warehouse, who was equally stunning but far more inexperienced. With the network down, relying on the emotion points provided by the diligent work of just the two of them. Although it was steady, it still seemed a bit too slow if he wanted to quickly accumulate a huge number of points to exchange for high-level powers and weapons. He had to think of some other way. Once it was over, Jiang Bai was cold and indifferent, with no mind for tenderness. He patted Qin Zhilan. "All right, get down." Qin Zhilan's body stiffened, and she struggled to climb up. The movement pulled at her sore muscles, making her unable to help but suck in a sharp breath, her brows tightly furrowed. In the dim light, she groped for the clothes scattered inside the car and put them on one by one. After getting dressed, she pushed open the car door. Her legs gave way, and she almost fell, hurriedly grabbing the door to steady herself. Her walking posture was obviously somewhat awkward as she limped toward Tang Mingyue. When Tang Mingyue saw her mother come out with her clothes in disarray and walking with difficulty, tears instantly welled up again. She hurried forward, supported Qin Zhilan, and asked softly, "Mom, are you okay?" Qin Zhilan shook her head tiredly, an unnatural flush still lingering on her face. Looking at her daughter's concerned gaze, her heart was filled with mixed emotions. She reached out, wanting to pat Tang Mingyue's head, but stopped midair. She remembered that just now in the car, her hands had touched quite a few places and had not been washed yet. Tang Mingyue was actually already so hungry that her stomach was pressed against her back, and so thirsty that her throat felt like it was on fire. But she forced herself not to touch anything until Qin Zhilan returned. After that, the mother and daughter could no longer care about appearances or hygiene. They directly grabbed the shrimp meat, soaked in cold oil with their hands, and stuffed it into their mouths. Although it had gone a bit cold, for the starving them, it was a rare delicacy. Then they unscrewed the caps of the icy mineral water and took small sips. Their thirst was relieved, but their hunger had not completely gone away. As for why there were still 97 portions of spicy crayfish in the storage space, yet Jiang Bai gave the two of them leftovers? It wasn't because he was stingy, but because Jiang Bai understood that people must not be fed too full. Qin Zhilan had just given herself to him. If they ate too well, these two women would definitely start entertaining wild thoughts and lose sight of their place. They might even suspect whether Jiang Bai wanted to become Tang Mingyue's stepfather. Most importantly, weren't these two actresses? I'm used to eating little, and it's good to be a bit frugal. Inside the Cullinan, Jiang Bai felt refreshed and invigorated. Qin Zhilan was so womanly. Then, his consciousness sank into the system interface. Looking at the whopping 1024 emotion points, a sense of lavish confidence welled up naturally. Exchange. Without the slightest hesitation, he first chose Physical Enhancement, LV2. Consumed 100 emotion points, remaining emotion points, 924. The familiar warm current surged up again, even more turbulent and powerful than when it was LV1. The entire process lasted nearly a minute. When the enhancement ended, Jiang Bai felt his physical fitness soar once again. If LV1 had surpassed the level of peak human athletes, then LV2 was completely inhuman. He clenched his fist and felt like he could punch Tyson to death with one blow. Awesome. Next, he exchanged for Dynamic Vision, LV1, and Basic Self-Healing, LV1. Consumed 50 emotion points to exchange for Dynamic Vision, LV1, remaining emotion points, 874. Consumed 50 emotion points to exchange for Basic Self-Healing, LV1. Remaining emotion points, 824. Two new streams of energy merged into his body. A cool sensation flowed into his eyes, and the world seemed to become clearer in his vision. And some details he had previously overlooked also came into view. The other gentle energy spread throughout his body, mainly concentrating on the muscles and skin, bringing a strange sensation. But that wasn't the end of it. Jiang Bai noticed that after exchanging for LV1, Dynamic Vision, and Basic Self-Healing, upgradable LV2 options had indeed appeared next to their icons. It seemed that the level cap of abilities was unlocked along with the level of the system shop he had unlocked. Exchange for Dynamic Vision, LV2. Exchange for Basic Self-Healing, LV2. Consumed 100 emotion points to exchange for Dynamic Vision, LV2. Remaining emotion points, 724. Consumed 100 emotion points to exchange for Basic Self-Healing, LV2. Remaining emotion points, 624. A stronger cool sensation poured into his eyes, and Jiang Bai could even feel the internal structure of his eyeballs undergoing some kind of fine adjustment. As for the improvement in his self-healing ability, it brought a surge of vitality that seemed to penetrate deep into his bones. He opened the attribute panel again. Host, Jiang Bai. Abilities, Physical Enhancement, LV2. Dynamic Vision, LV2. Basic Self-Healing, LV2. Jiang Bai couldn't help laughing wildly in his heart. This visibly tangible feeling of becoming stronger was simply too addictive. He felt that his condition at this moment was astonishingly good. LV2 Physical Enhancement had granted him immense strength that likely exceeded 1,000 gene, with comprehensive improvements to his speed, reaction, and endurance. With a thought, he activated LV2 Dynamic Vision. In an instant, the whole world seemed to have been switched to slow motion. The fine dust floating inside the car moved slowly along clearly visible trajectories. This was practically a bug-level ability. Jiang Bai marveled. Combined with his powerful physical qualities, an enemy's movements in battle would probably appear full of openings and slow as a snail in his eyes. To test his self-healing ability, with a thought, he exchanged for an alloy tactical machete. The blade flashed with a cold gleam, and the edge was extremely sharp. It looked really badass. He lightly drew it across the palm of his left hand. A cut about 2 centimeters long, not too deep, appeared, and blood instantly seeped out. It hurt a little, but immediately afterward, something miraculous happened. The bleeding stopped within a few seconds, and the muscle tissue at the edges of the wound visibly squirmed and contracted at a speed discernible to the naked eye. In less than 10 seconds, the wound had completely scabbed over, forming a dark red scab. Another half-minute later, the scab began to fall off, revealing the tender new skin underneath. Other than a faint red mark, it was almost impossible to tell that this spot had just been cut. Damn, that recovery speed. Jiang Bai stared wide-eyed. Although he already knew the self-healing ability was impressive, witnessing this movie-fast healing speed in person still shocked him deeply. If level 2 self-healing already had this effect, then what about higher levels? Limb regeneration? Even immortality? Jiang Bai felt his blood run hot. Powerful strength, extraordinary dynamic vision, terrifying recovery ability. Putting these 3 abilities together was practically the perfect setup for combat. He even had a strong urge to rush out right now, find a red armor beetle, and test in close combat just how far his current strength had reached. However, he quickly suppressed that impulse. The situation outside was unclear, and it was already night. so there was no need to take the initiative and risk danger. This warehouse was still a safe base for now. Jiang Bai tidied his clothes and pushed open the car door to get out. Tang Mingyue, startled by the sound, flinched and looked up. When she saw Jiang Bai, her eyes were full of fear. Qin Jilan's reaction, however, was a bit intriguing. She also jerked at the sound of the car door. But when she looked up at Jiang Bai, her expression was complicated, tinged with shame, anger, and humiliation. Yet there was less of the hatred from before, and even a faint, hard-to-describe hint of submission. Jiang Bai took in the mother and daughter's reactions and couldn't help muttering to himself, "TSK, what's going on with this Qin Jilan? Could there really be the beginnings of Stockholm Syndrome? She's already starting to adapt?" He walked up to them, ignoring Tang Mingyue's resentful little glare, and asked directly, "My phone has no signal. When did that start?" Tang Mingyue replied, "The signal was gone around 8:30. No matter how many times I refreshed Weibo, it wouldn't load. And I couldn't send messages either." 8:30? At that time, he had been in the back seat of the Cullinan, engaged in intense close-quarters combat training with Qin Jilan. No wonder he hadn't noticed. Jiang Bai nodded and analyzed. This meteor shower was too dense. I'm guessing a lot of nearby signal towers and base stations were smashed. Otherwise, even if everyone were dead, the infrastructure wouldn't have collapsed completely that quickly. For ordinary people, this was undoubtedly bad news. Communication cut off meant information blockade. The hope of rescue grew even slimmer, and the collapse of human social order would accelerate. Just as Jiang Bai was thinking about his next plan, Qin Jilan suddenly spoke. "I have an important piece of news here." Jiang Bai turned his gaze to her. "What news?"